Hello, hello. Good evening. Welcome to your wellness check in. Today is Thursday evening, and I'm checking in. Let's talk about boundaries. So, for those of you, the new faces in the place, just want to say hello and welcome. Thank you for hopping on and spending your evening with me. You're in for a treat. My name is Fallon Lopez. I am a registered nurse. I'm also a certified health and wellness coach, and I am the CEO of Are You Well? That is my health and wellness coaching business. I work with nurses. I help empower nurses to take back their health and healing, find their voice again, and prevent burnouts. And tonight, I want to talk about something that is going to help you prevent burnout, help you show up in your wellness goals, show up in your health goals, and it's called boundaries. Boundaries is the new hype word. It's the new buzzword, right? We may famously know boundaries as saying no to others. No, that's my boundary. Saying no is a boundary. Saying no is a whole sentence. So we may know this, famous no boundary, right? Like saying no. And that's great and all. Saying no is so important, especially if you're someone like me that had a problem with saying no. I was quick to always say yes. I had no boundaries. Like I had what is called porous boundaries. And we're going to go into some terminology around the different types of boundary problems or boundary issues here in a minute. But I just wanted to share a little bit about what I struggled with and how I came to find out, okay, boundaries is an issue, sis, something you need to work on. So boundaries was a foreign word to me. I really didn't have a clue until, in the pandemic, we were starting to learn about ourselves. We were starting to read books and we had a lot of extra time. So I did a lot of self-development during the pandemic, and I started reading a book that my sister recommended me called Boundaries. It's written by two Christian psychologists, Dr. Townsend, Dr. Cloud. Really great book, just literally called Boundaries. And it changed my whole life, y'all. I really was shocked. I was thrown for a loop when I found out that a lot of the issues that I had, a lot of the problems that I had with people pleasing and wanting to help others so much resulted or came from the lack of boundaries. I had no boundaries, and boundaries are important. Boundaries are there to protect us. Boundaries are there to show us, this needs to be protected. I lived my life on the edge. I said yes to everything, everyone. And I wanted to show up for everyone and everything. So I had very little reserve for myself. This led to burnout because I was so available for everyone else, because I showed up for everyone else, because I wanted to be accepted by everyone else. I had very little reserve for myself and for my own energy and for my own time and for my own healing. And because I had very little time and reserve for my own things, I wasn't able to really pour into Fallon. I wasn't really able to understand Fallon. Like, what is it that she really needs? What are the things that she needs to thrive in this nursing life? And because I didn't know myself and know my limits, know my boundaries, know when to stop, know when to say no, I was literally burnt out. And nursing definitely brought that to light. So, like I said, I learned about boundaries and it was a shock to the system. But now I'm like, I'm glad. I never want to go back to that old version of me. And that is maybe something that you're going through. That is something maybe you've been hearing all the buzzwords about boundaries and, saying no, but what does it really mean? How does this, impact your life? How can you translate it and use it in your life, in your nursing practice, and in your personal growth and development? So let's talk about that a little bit more tonight. I want to talk about the different boundaries porous boundaries, also known as open boundaries. Then we have closed boundaries, also known as rigid boundaries, and then healthy boundaries. So we want to be on the healthy boundary side. So when you think about boundaries, you can think about like a two opposite ends of the spectrum. So open boundaries are people that are always going to be saying yes. They're always letting everyone in. They're very dependent on others for their happiness. They're very dependent on others to make decisions. It's hard for them to make decisions on their own. And they're very dependent. And they also have a kind of like a victim mentality sometimes. These people have open boundaries, also known as porous boundaries. They have no defined limits. They don't really know where they end and where other people begin. And so it's easy for these type of people with these type of boundaries, me right here, it's easy for these type of people to get enmeshed. It's easy for these people to get overloaded and to really attach to things. Like you attach yourself to your job and you attach yourself to being a nurse so much because you don't have these boundaries. You don't have these clear limits, this protection of who you are and what you're about. You know, you're just open. You let anyone in because you're the fun person or you're everyone's friend. This was me. And something that I had to work on. So when I found out, you know, open boundaries, how does that happen? You know, this stems from a childhood problem, a childhood issue. I wouldn't say problem. It was a childhood issue, things that happened in my childhood. And I had to go through some therapy to work through that for sure. And then, like I said, think about two ends of the spectrum. So we have our open, our porous boundaries, they're weak. People don't say no a lot. You know, those boundaries there's like literally none, no boundaries, no limits. And then you have the people with the closed, the rigid boundaries. Now, these people have their walls up high. They have their boundary game on point. And it's like all the way on point, like to the point where they don't let others in, to the point where they don't ask for help. Their boundaries are so sky high. They don't ever know how to like put down the mask. They just keep on the happy face or just the tough facade, that outside skin. They just put it on so hard because they want to protect so much. They like, this is my limit. This is it. You know, that rigidity, also known as rigid boundaries. And when you think about these two opposite sides of the spectrums, you can see how going off the end on either side is not good. Either you're too loosey-goosey or you're too rigid and uptight. Look, that is not healthy, right? Like you need to find the healthy medium. And I was listening to a podcast with my girl, Anita Phillips. If you're not listening to Anita Phillips, she's a psychologist, a Christian psychologist, amazing. She was talking about boundaries as well. And she said the key to this is flexibility. Having that flexibility to, you know, be in your boundaries, but also be flexible to like, you know, kind of like find your flow, finding your way through it, not being so stuck on one or the other, like no boundaries or just very rigid boundaries, finding your in between, finding your flow. And that's important when we're, you know, in our learning journey, in our growing journey, as we're getting to that boundary breakthrough. It's so important that we, you know, try to implement flexibility, but it can be hard. It can be scary. It can make you feel like everything's changing and, you know, people around you may make you feel like something's wrong with you when you're starting your boundary journey. Not only do we hear the famous no is a complete sentence, there's a lot of hype around boundaries. And, you know, we talk about putting our boundaries on others. Like, look, this is my boundary. This is a no, right? Like, this is all I can do, right? We hear a lot of that. But let's talk about boundaries within ourselves. Yeah, you need boundaries with yourself, sis. And I think it's important that we talk about that as well, because not only do we want to have healthy boundaries with others, but we need to have healthy boundaries with ourselves. And so what are some of those things that come up when you start thinking about boundaries with yourself? Does that mean being strict and being restricted, being strict on yourself? Does that mean being very disciplined on yourself, being hard on yourself? No, not necessarily. No. Boundaries are there to protect us, right? Like I was saying in the beginning, boundaries show us where our limits are. Having that one-on-one with yourself and really being honest with yourself of where your limits are and being okay with those limits. I'm not talking about, check yourself before you wreck yourself, being hard on yourself, criticizing yourself, or just, beating yourself up. No, boundaries are there to protect you, to show you your limits. Boundaries let you know where you end and where someone else begins. Boundaries help you better understand yourself. And I think it's even more important that we practice with others and with ourselves. So what are some things that come up for you when you think about boundaries? A lot of people may think about food. Having boundaries with food. Yes, that is a real thing. Sometimes you got to be real with yourself, sis. Put down that chip bag. You don't need those candies. You don't need all that chocolate. Let's be honest. What do you really need? You don't need that. Don't even go by that spot because you're going to see your old favorite fast food spot. Don't even go over there, sis. Another thing that I feel like is very important to practice boundaries with yourself so that you can get your breakthrough is with unhealthy thoughts. Thoughts that are just going to really leave you in a funky mood. Like, why are you thinking about these things? And I've had to check myself with certain thoughts. Especially when I start to ruminate and I start to bring myself into a pity party, I have to be like, hey, snap out of it, sis, get here. Like, those thoughts are not healthy. Those thoughts are not helping you get to your next level. Let's cut it out. Let's stop that right here. So no to unhealthy thoughts, no to food, no to unhealthy relationships. Come on, let's be honest. Like, we have to be having those boundaries on relationships. Maybe those people, they come around you, they suck you dry. All they do is complain. They aren't really focused on finding a solution. They're more focused on talking about everyone else, or, their energy doesn't align with you. Something doesn't align with you. Saying no to those unhealthy relationships, that doesn't mean that you cut them off and you're just like, I'm done with you, I throw you away. It just means limiting your time with them, maybe. Limiting the amount of time that you spend with them, maybe limiting the amount or the way you rely on these new people or on these old relationships that no longer serve you. Limiting your expectations on them. And that's something that I've had to learn for sure. So how do boundaries benefit your health goals? That's what I really want to get into today. So boundaries benefit your health goals when you are using the boundaries or being more aware of the boundaries with yourself. So you have health goals, right? We all want to be our healthiest, wealthiest nurse self. It's busy out here. We're burnt out all the time. There is a massive nursing shortage going on, crazy things going on with our pay. So how do we survive this nursing lifestyle? How do we survive this lifestyle without just wanting to ditch it all? We have to have healthy boundaries with ourselves. We have to know when to call it quits and when to be flexible. Like I said, there can be two opposite sides to this spectrum. Two, totally different sides. It's like the pendulum, can swing back and forth. And especially when you're learning more about yourself and you're learning more about your boundaries and where you started, you may start off in the porous and the really weak boundaries. You had a problem saying no to people, and then you shift all the way to the other side and you're like, strict boundaries on for everyone, for myself, for everything. So you have to slowly find your healthy medium. You have to slowly come back to this healthy middle. And we need to definitely practice that with our health goals. So if you're trying to lose weight, if you're trying to eat healthier, if you're trying to work on your mental health, really putting those boundaries on yourself, not as a way of restricting, but really being honest with what your body needs in the moment. We work such long hours. Why put such strict expectations on ourselves to show up at the gym for 2 hours or to show up and have this super strict calorie counting diet? Why do we put these expectations on ourselves so hard or aim for such perfection or just don't even ask for help when we're already in a stressful environment at work? Why add more stress? Learn to put up those boundaries like, look, this is where I'm at. This is my limit. Maybe I don't get up at 4:30 a.m. every morning to get this workout in. Maybe I get in a walk in the evenings, but I'm going to move my body. Maybe, I worked a long shift. I couldn't cook my meal prep. I couldn't bring my lunch to work. Where is my boundary here? I'm not going to go eat, go out to eat or go to fast food, grab a fast food. I'm going to have some boundaries with myself. I'm going to put some limits on myself. Maybe I didn't make my meal prep, but I'm going to grab something healthier on the way. Let me go out of my way to find what my body needs. I just got off of a long shift, or I'm going to a long shift. Where can I put my boundaries up in this moment, at this time? It's really being honest with yourself and what your body needs. So I want to talk a little bit about the self-care hype. We hear all about self-care. Self-care isn't selfish. Self-care is putting yourself first. Okay, yes, I believe all of those things, putting yourself first. But it's so much more than just overindulging. Let's be honest, it's so much more than overindulging or, just giving yourself everything, just anything your heart desires. Like putting limits on maybe your social media activity, putting limits on the music that you listen to that doesn't uplift you, putting limits on the food that you put into your body. Self-care isn't about just overindulging or just going all out. No, self-care is about really showing your body what it needs, giving your body what it needs, showing yourself care. So what does that mean? How do you show yourself care? You need to make sure that you're in your healthiest, in your most happiest self. And what does your body need in that moment? It doesn't mean like just go overindulge. It's about being generous with your body. What is it that you really need? Asking yourself those questions. Why am I quick to overindulge or to do all of the things, but what is it that I really need? How can I be generous to my body right now? I really feel like boundaries helps you choose to add to your life. It's not about taking away. It's not about being so strict. And if you're working on your health goals, this is an area that you're going to have to work on. Where does my boundaries lie? Where are my limits? And if you're trying to lose weight, you're trying to eat healthier, you're trying to work on your mental health, where do your boundaries lie? Where have you been at before? Taking inventory. Where are your boundaries at now, and where do you want to go moving forward? Seeing and understanding that there are two ends of the spectrum, but learning how to, let the pendulum swing from one extreme to the other, but coming back to that middle, coming back to those healthy boundaries. And it's all about flexibility. So think of the houseplant, right? Even the houseplant has boundaries. We know it needs water. We know it needs sun. It needs attention. I'm working, I don't know if y'all see my little plantita back there. I'm working on my houseplant right now. It's in my windowsill. I know every week I have to water it. Every day he needs sun, and I have to give him some attention. I have to, smooth out the leaves and things like that. So there are boundaries even on plants so that they can grow. The 3 things that it just needs every day. And I have to be consistent, with these things, or what happens? It doesn't grow, it dies. So how can we show ourselves the same type of boundaries? Okay, these are the things that I need to grow. These are the things that I need to flourish. It doesn't mean that I'm being strict on myself. It means I'm giving myself an opportunity to grow. I'm giving myself an opportunity to flourish. Come on, let's be honest. What are the things that we're doing now that is not allowing us to flourish, that is not allowing us to hit our health goals, that is not allowing us to eat healthier or to work on our mental health? What are the things that we are doing now that does not align with healthy boundaries? And where can we go moving forward? Like I said, we can be on 2 opposite sides of the spectrum when it comes to our boundary work, but finding that sweet middle in between will definitely help you come to that healthy boundary in the middle. So as we wrap up, boundaries are created to protect you. Boundaries help you define where you end and where others begin. We all have our limits, and that's okay. But as you're in this work, as you're doing the work, you may start off with like I had the no boundaries, the porous boundaries, this, I let everyone in. You may swing the pendulum all the way to the rigid boundaries. You may have your walls sky high, but you're doing the work. I'm proud of you. And as time passes, you will learn to bring it back. You will learn to come back to your healthy medium and become more flexible as time passes. As you become more secure in your boundaries, the more you understand that you are already protected. And this work is so important as nurses. The more we understand who we are, what we need, so that we can, show up as these leaders, the more that we can better take care of ourselves, the more that we can give to others. So that's why it's so important that we do the work now, that we take care of ourselves now, that we really understand what our bodies need. And boundaries are a super important way that we learn that about ourselves. We learn what are our limits. We learn what are the things that does not align. What are the things that are important to me? What are the things that I need, And so doing this boundary work now is going to help you be a better caretaker. When you start knowing your boundaries, you can start seeing it in others. You start identifying it in others. You start seeing, oh, okay, they're working on their boundaries. Oh, I see you. That's your boundary. I don't, you don't get offended when people tell you no or set their boundaries. You're like, okay, I see you working on your boundaries, saying no to those overtime shifts, saying no. I see you, sis, and it's a different understanding when you come from that place. And it helps you overall to give to others and to be a more powerful leader, a more powerful part of the medical team, because you know who you are, you know your limits, you know your role, you know what you're about, you know who you are, and you don't get swept up into everything that comes your way. You don't get drawn into all of the drama that might happen, all of the things that are happening with your families. You're secure in here. And it takes time. It's something that I've had to continually work on every day, reminding myself where I came from, celebrating the wins. There was a time that I didn't even understand boundaries or know how to implement them, or I was even scared to speak up about my boundaries. But every little win, every time I speak up, every time I put my boundaries on, I celebrate. Even if I mess up, even if I realize at the end of the day, I'm like, no, that's a boundary. I don't like that. There's a reason why you don't like that. Trust yourself. It's all about being more self-aware, being more in tune with who you are, and becoming a better version of you. That's what we need. That's what we deserve as healthcare heroes. We're always giving back to others. Let's take some time to turn the tables on ourselves and to really do that heavy work, that heavy lifting, and doing the boundary work, doing that inner work is so important to your growing and glowing journey, sis. And that's what I want for you. If any of this made sense to you, if any of this boundary work is something that you want to work on, definitely tap in with me. I'd love to hop on a free discovery call and talk more about boundaries and where I can help you in this boundary work, because wellness is a holistic approach. It is a full body approach. We're not just focusing on just the strict diets or the endless workouts. No, we're looking at our health holistically from our mind, body, and soul. So what are the things that your soul needs? What are the things that your mind needs and your body needs? It all is interconnected. And once you start doing the work from within, doing the boundary work, finding out more about you, then you can start creating the goals. Then you can start putting the action behind it. So definitely reach out to me. If you ever want to hop on a call, we can do that. Stay connected with me. And yes, I'm super excited about all of the new things that is coming in our community. So stay tuned. I really hope you enjoyed this boundary breakthrough. Let me know your thoughts below, and I will see you next time. Bye.